Now, it's time for us to have another delve into the morning's papers. Here with me to review them this morning are the author and broadcaster Emma Wolfe and the writer and broadcaster Edward Adu, who are doing very well for us this New Year's Day. Both of you short of sleep, but powering on through, which is great stuff. I'll talk to you in just a moment.
We're going to... That's a way to get through it.
We're going to do it. Let's take a quick look, though, shall we, at the front pages before we chat to them. And the Sunday Express carries an exclusive interview with Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, promising better times ahead with what he calls a New Year master plan to kickstart Britain's economic recovery. Labour warns that the UK economy faces a massive hit this year because of the government's refusal to negotiate with unions over public sector strikes. That makes the front of The Observer. The Sunday Times leads with new research which suggests that wavering voters could still switch to the Tories at the next election and wreck Keir Starmer's chances of becoming Prime Minister. The Sunday Telegraph says that the French energy giant EDF might have to shut down 2 of its older UK nuclear plants next year as a result of the windfall tax on its profits. Energy also makes the front of the Mail on Sunday, which says that UK households are paying billions extra in a stealth tax to fund the bailout of energy supply firms who collapse. The Sunday People carries a claim from medics that pressure on the NHS means that patients are dying before they even get a hospital bed. The Sunday Mirror reports that former Royal Aide Lady Hussey, who resigned following a race row after asking a UK-born black charity boss where she was really from, is being invited to King Charles's coronation. And the Daily Star on Sunday continues its campaign to help the country's pubs recover from the economic crisis by asking people not to do dry January. So let's bring in Emma and Edward now to go through some of the inside pages. We dealt with a few of the front pages last hour, didn't we? But Edward, you've picked out an article focusing on the war in Ukraine to kick us off. This is in the Telegraph, isn't it? And
it's a great piece by Daniel Johnson, kind of examining. It's nearing a year of the atrocities, the war that's taken place, which has affected everybody. It's not just affected Ukrainians, it's affected the whole world economically. Petrol, food prices, whatever's happened from this war, we have certainly felt we've been part of it. Daniel's piece is kind of examining Putin's kind of his mindset, the ideology around this, and as to what he hoped to achieve from this. I mean, clearly, nothing's been achieved from this. And what hasn't been focused by not just various news pieces, but I think Daniel kind of alludes to here, is talking about the Russians, the liberal Russians who have been affected by this, who before the war were able to walk into their local McDonald's and to get a burger, and they can't do that now because most Western brands, when the war kicked off, have stepped away. They've moved out, and it's crippled the economy. And from what is in many key points are in Dan's piece, and one of the major points that he pointed out, is that it will take 30 years for the economy and for the military to get back to where it's supposed to be. And I think what a lot of people are thinking is, when will this war end? And also Russia's its reputation on the sort of international stage. Where does it go from here? Because clearly there is not an end to it, and you've got to feel for the Ukrainians. I mean, nobody wants to be in that predicament and to live, to be in a place, your home, where you had electricity, life, everything was normalized, and then suddenly everything has been turned around. And then also for Russians who may not necessarily agree or opt with Putin's regime, where do they stand? So it's a really interesting piece from Daniel Johnson.
Yeah, and as you say, a really uncertain start to the new year for people in Ukraine. President Zelensky, in his New Year's message, giving a really defiant signal to Ukrainians that, his wish for 2023 is victory, but obviously a a lot needs to happen before we can conclude that, isn't there? Let's move on, shall we, to the second story that we're focusing on this morning, Emma, that you've chosen. This is in The Observer, and it focuses on fuel bills and the impact on ambulances.
Yeah, so back to our domestic woes. Obviously, we've recently had the ambulance walkouts along with nurses, but this is a slightly different angle from The Observer. They're talking about the ambulance services being pushed to the brink by these soaring energy bills, by fuel bills. So there's been a £14 million rise in fuel bills, which are pushing already very, very overstretched ambulance services to the absolute brink, as well as, the pay demands and other energy costs and construction projects that are going on, costs around that. These soaring fuel bills are really pushing many ambulance services to the limit. Each ambulance service across England is paying around £1 million a year on fuel, and often they're sort of the areas that they cover are expanding, so that means they have to drive further and therefore use more fuel. And the NHS is warning that these costs, for the most part, have to be met by their existing budgets, and it's stretching all their vital funds to absolute breaking point. Two of the ambulance services mentioned here are Yorkshire and West Midlands, but actually all of the ambulance services across England are really under considerable pressure. A government spokesperson is saying, well, they have provided additional funding, and they're also saying that inflation is expected to halve over the next year as, their economic master plan takes hold and all of this. But obviously, at the moment, the situation for ambulances on so many fronts is critical.
Well, yes, and just a reminder of the impact of those energy price rises across so many different sectors and affecting so many different people. Let's move on, shall we, Edward, to The Telegraph and their take on the news we had yesterday, nearly 24 hours ago, that the former Pope, Benedict XVI, had died.
Very sad. As a Catholic, as a former water server, and coming from a family of faith, it was very sad to hear this news. And it's part of the piece here. It kind of alludes to, well, it doesn't allude to. It says that the actual title says God's Rottweiler bequeaths divided legacy. Now, when I saw that, and lots of outlets, including Sky News, have paid a dignified tribute to the former Pope, but I think it kind of questions some people who are atheists or non-believers as to why or how the Pope can be kind of regarded in this way. He clearly had challenges where he had to deal with the allegations and also some of the stories which came across connected to child abuse, which the Catholic Church, certainly they have to, they've got to step up. They've got to try and resolve and some of the allegations. And there were also other things. He had to try and take the church into.
Sorry, Edward. There's so many things to say about the Pope, but we are out of time. I do apologise, but we'll see you again in an hour. Edward and Emma, for the moment, thank you.